The new dinosaur park in Canada was coming along nicely. It only had a couple of dinosaurs at the moment, but they were already a big hit with the audience. As previously said, the park was looking for the help of viewers to come up with the names of the other two cryolophosaurus. The alpha already was named Elvis by the park itself, but the other two were still undecided. The park then finally announced the viewer suggestions that were chosen. Thank you all for so many wonderful suggestions. For the male cryo, the name Prince was chosen, sent in by viewer Lunch Trooper. Not only did this kind of fit in with the fact that Elvis of course was the king, but it reminded the park staff of course also of Prince the artist, of which many were a fan of. The female cryo was named Crystal, as sent in by viewer a Carter51. Be sure to stick around to hear which dinosaurs need a name this time and leave your suggestions in the comments down below. With the two types of dinosaurs settled in, the next animal was already on its way. To still keep the attention on the cryolophosaurus a bit, the next would be the small Compsognathus, also known as the compy. These small dinosaurs would be the smallest creatures in all of the park, and though they might look and move very cutesy, they could be very dangerous in large numbers. They would hunt small prey sometimes if traveling in packs large enough, but they were very light and fragile creatures themselves, and thus they mostly would eat from cadavers. They were kind of the vultures of the prehistoric age and would clean up any dead dinosaur that had been left after large predators have had their share of flesh. Now the movement of these animals was a big problem, since someone at the higher ranks gave green light to sedate them with the rangers in the choppers and then also transport them via helicopter. Though this worked fine with the other dinosaurs, the compies were so small that it took the rangers all day long to actually find and shoot the compies themselves. They were nearly invisible in the taller grass, and coupling them to the transport choppers was a logistical nightmare in and of itself. Honestly, these dinosaurs could be carried with one hand, so someone up there did not know what they were doing when they signed the documents to greenlight this operation. Now since they were so small, and there were so many of them, these dinosaurs would not be named, since it would be too difficult to tell them apart. But with the suggestions of names for the cryolophosaurus, there was one suggestion that stood out that would be very funny if put on a compy. Viewer Lino suggested the name Big Eddie, and thus the alpha compy was named Big Eddie, or Big Ed as some would call it, with the irony speaking for itself. It should also be noted that despite being an alpha, the compies were such a wild and jittery bunch that there was no real sign of hierarchy or leadership. Since the compies would not hunt larger prey, it was necessary this time to have them fed by feeders with meat already prepared. With most other predators, a goat would be fine, and though compies have been known to take out larger prey than a goat, they might still be a bit startled or scared to attack sometimes. With the feeders and the prepared meat, they could eat and dig in whenever they wanted. And so with the compies also settled in, it was time for the next enclosure to receive its new inhabitants. The next project had been planned for quite a bit. In fact, it had been in the making ever since it was decided to have the park placed in Canada. The area, of course, was a lot colder compared to the Central American islands that the first zoo and safari park were built. Though most dinosaurs were designed to withstand the harsher weather, they still seemed to respond well to warmth and other external sources of heat. With that in mind, the park's higher-ups wanted to build the world's first dinosaur hot springs. Hot springs where dinosaurs could relax, bathe, and regain their strength during the cold weather. It would be a massive enclosure and a mixed zone with various herbivores of different sizes. The first dinosaurs that were brought over were the Edmontosaurus, since they were so easy to put inside an enclosure with another species. At the moment, there were only 3 brought over, but later more would arrive to accompany them. They had always responded incredibly well to be put with other herbivores, and their agile build made it to where they would surely love the hot springs, since they could easily sit, lay down, and stand back up again, and these herbivores were also known to easily walk on its 2 hind legs as on all 4s. The other species that was brought over was the cryolophosaurus, named after the famous author of the book Jurassic Park. This initial sluggish and cranky looking dinosaur was actually pretty friendly, but was very dependent on being in a group. They were rather difficult to breed, and thus in the beginning only one was brought over, but it would not take long before another couple would join them. With this first batch of dinosaurs having arrived, they were flown over to the zone for initial testing and inspection. The actual hot spring area was massive, and so big in fact, that it was difficult to see how these few animals would respond to it. There were multiple hot springs, each with a different function, and one had to wait for a few more dinosaurs to see how they would react to it. Back at the arrival zone, the next dinosaurs that would be added had arrived in the form of the Dinosaurus and Triceratops. The Dinosaurs were very small and cute. They were decided upon to be used since they could breathe some extra life into the zone and be playful compared to those more heavy and sometimes sluggish types, but without being too skittish like the Gallimimus. The Triceratops, of course, were heavy and calm, but could do some pretty nasty damage with their large horns. 3 were initially flown over, and there were 2 males and 1 female, and so it was likely that the 2 males would fight for dominance and also the right to mate with the female. These 3 Triceratops would need to be named by you, the viewers. As said before, there are 2 males and 1 female, so please let us at the park know which names you think are suitable for these gentle giants. The duels these Triceratops would have would surely be a delight to be seen by the audience, but with fights like this, it was not uncommon for a trike to get wounded. That's also where the hot springs would come in, since the water that was high in minerals would accelerate and help with the healing process. Since the temperature was cold, the first of the dinosaurs did indeed react very well to the warm water and its soft healing touch. The Cryolophosaurus loved it even so much that it would submerge its entire head into the water, only to be startled a moment later by the fact that it couldn't breathe. Yeah, they weren't the smartest of dinosaurs, but it was cute to see them in a habitat like this. The enclosure was divided into 3 separate hot springs, and then another body of water that served as a drinking spot. The 2 largest hot springs were of a hot temperature of around 40 degrees, and the one nearest to the coast had a significant higher amount of minerals in it that would work as a peel for the skin. Dinosaurs that would bathe in these hot springs would almost have a sort of wellness experience, and would visibly look healthier and happier after having soaked in it for parts of the day. The one all the way at the back was a small hot spring with a temperature of 45 degrees, which meant it was very hot and would probably only be used by the dinosaurs on the coldest of days or if they had a sore leg or other wound. See, that was the great thing about these hot springs, is that they relaxed the dinosaurs and accelerated healing as well. The final dinosaurs that were added to the hot springs were the Maiasaurus, as they were also very docile and gentle and could easily be mixed within the group already established. And by the end, the hot springs were an incredible sight to behold and a thriving little ecosystem where the dinosaurs were happier than ever. It did sometimes occur where the dinosaurs would fight each other, but it more often than not was a bit playful, and even if some wounds were left behind, it was nothing that a day or 2 relaxing near the warm water wouldn't fix. The herbivores were in heaven, and could relax all day long and take naps, bathe, socialize, and eat all the delicious leaves and fruits that they wanted. It was a great success, and we would surely see in the future more of these creations for other types of dinosaurs as well. What, for example, would happen if we were to make hot springs for carnivores, or maybe a mixed enclosure for both carnivores and herbivores? Now remember, these dinosaurs did not have the behavioral prohibitors applied to them, so for the moment, the herbivores and carnivores could not yet be mixed without their being held to pay. And so with the audience enjoying the view with a coffee or a donut of all the relaxing dinosaurs at the hot springs, it was time to move on to the next dinosaur of the park. It would yet again be a golden oldie. It was the Ceratosaurus that would see the light of day. But then after that, the green light was finally given to prepare for the build of a lagoon for the first aquatic creature.